Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 2022 Foxboro Jaycees Candidates Night. This is an annual tradition that the Jaycees are happy to bring to you, the voters of Foxboro. My name is Pam Warren. I've been a Jaycee for more than 20 years, the last 12 of them here in Foxboro, and I'm currently serving as the Secretary and Wise Fox Editor for the Foxboro Jaycees. I am happy to be serving this evening as your moderator for this annual event. Now, due to some scheduling issues this year, we're still coming to you from our own homes or from vacation spots via Zoom. The wonderful staff at Foxboro Cable Access is once again bringing this to you this evening. So many thanks to Mike Weber and Lauren Bitar and all of the FCA staff for helping us put this program together yet again this year. They are truly a great resource here in the town of Foxboro. This year, we have two individuals running for the two seats on the Board of Selectmen. Mr. Mark Elfman, known as Doc, is running unopposed for re-election, and Dennis Keefe, formerly of the Advisory Committee, is running to fill the seat vacated by Edward O'Leary at the end of the last year. We also have 4 candidates for school committee who are looking to fill 2 seats. We have incumbents Rob Canfield and Brent Reuter, and challengers Matt Light and Joseph Pyretes. All 4 candidates and the 2 Selectmen's Board candidates will be answering questions from our member of the press. We have local Sun Chronicle columnist Bill Gouveia. We know we cannot run these events without our neutral members of the press in attendance, and we thank Bill for being here this evening. Now, just one last disclaimer. As the Foxboro Jaycees has stated in our bylaws, we do not and cannot endorse or promote any individual candidates in these contests. We only wish to offer you a chance to listen to those candidates in order for you to be better informed in your decision come May 2nd. Now let's move on to our ground rules for this evening. My position here is moderator for this forum. I will keep track of who is speaking next and the order of the questions. Given the Zoom format, I will also be serving as timekeeper. And I ask the candidates to occasionally look at me or to have your chat box open. I will alert you as you approach your allotted time or if you go over. We are asking those who are reading statements to keep them about 3 minutes in length. And for those who are in attendance participating in the Q&A to have your introductory statements be no more than 3 minutes as well. For the question and answer segments, the candidates will have a couple of minutes to answer each question, after which they may be asked a follow-up question, depending on how Bill feels about your answers. The candidate will then have 1 minute to answer that follow-up. Each candidate will have a chance to answer the same question. After that question and answer period, each candidate may choose to make a closing remark that would be around 2 minutes in length. We ask each candidate to remain muted until it is your turn to speak. And then just please remember to unmute yourself when you are about to speak. Now, without further ado, let's get started. First of all, I'd like to welcome our representative of the media from the Sun Chronicle. It's Mr. Bill Gouveia. Bill, thank you very much for being here this evening.
Thank you very much for having me. Thanks to Foxboro Cable and to the Jaycees, and I'm very happy to be able to help.
Great. Okay, so our first group of candidates up this evening is the Selectmen. We will begin with some questions for those 2 candidates for the Board of Selectmen. Though both are running unopposed, these are the primary governing board of the town, and we like to invite those who are running to participate in a Q&A so that our voters can better get to know them. So please welcome our incumbent, Mr. Mark Elfman, and Mr. Dennis Keefe. Thank you both for being here this evening. Now, as we discussed earlier, you can each offer an introductory statement, and then Bill will ask each of you some questions and maybe even some follow-ups. And then you can each offer a closing statement if you're so inclined. During the tech test, we flipped a coin, an official Foxboro coin, and to see who would start. And the winner of that toss was Mr. Elfman. Then we'll alternate the questions from there. And please note that I will try and get your attention. I'll do 1 minute, half a minute, stop. So make sure to glance at my box or your chat box, check on the time. So let's get going. Mr. Elfman, When you are ready, unmute yourself and please begin your opening statement.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Thank you, as always, for putting this program on. It's a wonderful program. Even though we're running unopposed, I think it'll be good having a bunch of questions for us to see what we feel is going on in the community. And I think it's going to be important a little later on with the school committee having that question and answer period. About myself, been a resident of Foxboro for the last 32 years. I also have a business in Foxboro. I'm a chiropractor in town, downtown. I've been on various volunteer boards throughout my 32 years. My wife and I raised 2 boys, went through the Foxboro school systems, off to college, and are out in the real world now. Nothing but great things to say about the Foxboro school system. It certainly did our family well. This will be my 3rd term running for Selectmen. The first 6 years have been wonderful 6 years. I really enjoyed giving back to the community, especially at this level as a Selectman. There were times in the beginning, as that first year or two, when you don't even realize what you didn't know about running a government, and slid into, had a great bunch of people to teach me. We have a great town manager and his staff, Bill Keegan, our finance director. Could always go to him and ask questions, which I did quite a bit my first year or so as Selectman. Ran again for a 2nd term. That was mostly during COVID. I was lucky enough, I guess, to be chairman of the board for the 2 years during COVID. It was a very trying time, certainly for the entire country, the state, and the community. But I think Foxboro did a phenomenal job over these last 2 years with COVID, and now going into the post-COVID and some of the funds that we have, the ARP funds, the CARES money that's coming back from federally and through the state, through the county. It'll be very important for us going forward to use that money wisely. So glad I'm part of that team running again and helping the community use those funds wisely going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
All set. Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Keefe, it is your turn. Please unmute yourself, and when you're ready, you may begin.
Very good. Good evening, everyone. As Doc Elfman just said, really appreciate this kind of forum being coordinated by the Jaycees. It's just terrific to allow the residents to get to know us better, myself in particular. Good evening. My name is Dennis Keefe. I am running for Select Board for the town of Foxboro. As a relative newcomer to town, I wanted to tell you a bit about my family and I, and why I have decided to run. I am happily married to my wonderful wife, Laura. Together, we have raised 3 children, all of whom are grown and fully living their lives. We also have 7 terrific grandchildren. We moved here from Norwood 5 years ago and have come to love the town. We have lived in other area towns and have found Foxboro to have many positive attributes. It has been interesting to see how different towns operate, what works best in different settings, and what could be improved. I will be bringing new perspectives with fresh eyes to town operations. Not being a long-term resident, I have no agenda other than to help make improvements for the betterment of our town, working with the great people already here. I do think Foxboro is very well run, but there are always opportunities for improvement. That is what has defined my career wherever I've worked, this passion for improvement through listening and learning. Over my career, I've run large and small organizations. I have extensive experience in both public and private sectors, including collective bargaining and labor relations. In the communities where I've worked, I was actively engaged in their improvement, whether by leading fundraising campaigns for worthy causes or partnering with local government. It was an exhilarating time, routine working 12-plus hour days, while balancing the needs of home with Laura and our family. It left little time for volunteerism where I lived, however, until I retired, and suddenly I found time to pursue these interests. So I joined the advisory committee 3 years ago. Membership on this committee, working with terrific community and government leaders, have given me a bird's eye view of the issues and challenges facing Foxboro for the future. I have described it like drinking from a water hose. One such challenge will be filling the shoes of a very capable but retiring town manager, Bill Keegan. Also, being on the advisory committee has led me to aspire for a larger role, hence my interest in the select board vacancy. Finally, and importantly, I understand the omnipresence of COVID-19 in all of our lives. Given my experience as Commissioner of Public Health for the City of Cambridge for 11 years, I am currently engaged in helping higher education institutions with preparation and mitigation strategies for dealing with COVID-19, working with Clark University and Worcester as their Chief Health Officer. This experience has been a motivating factor in pursuing this important position for the town, as well as I believe my expertise would be helpful. For these reasons and more, I hope I can count on your vote May 2nd. Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Okay, Mr. Gouveia, it is time for you to begin with the questions. Your first question will go to Mr. Keith.
Hey, thank you to candidates. Welcome. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of this. I'd like to start off with a fairly typical question, but what do you, Mr. Keith, what do you see as the role of the select board with regard to the budget process? Please explain to the voters watching out there why they should have confidence that their tax dollars are being spent wisely and efficiently, and explain how you'll go about ensuring that that happens.
Well, to me, the select board has ultimate authority over the budget. And I understand how the process works very well because of being on the advisory committee for 3 years. The advisory committee weighs in, they provide their recommendations, but ultimately it's the select board that makes the final call. And there's, very detailed analysis of every department, every budget, every line item. Everything happens very, very thoroughly when it comes to the budget. It's one of the best budgeting processes I've seen. And, in organizations I've been in, I've seen a lot. I know budgets, I know them inside and out, and I know I can make a contribution at the select board level because of my budget background. I do have an MBA as well. But again, I've run large and small organizations. I've been in budget crises. I've been in positive budgets. I've been through it all. I've been in situations where, the labor component is very challenging. One of my organizations, Cambridge Health Alliance, we were wall-to-wall unions. I think there were 14 different unions. So all of that comes into the mix in terms of knowing the budget, meeting the challenges of the budget, meeting the challenges of the economy. And with inflation in front of us, I think the skills I bring and the experience I bring will be very, very helpful to the select board in terms of really meeting the budgetary challenges that we'll be facing.
Okay, thank you. And same question to you, Mr. Elfman. What do you see as the role of the select board in the budget process? Explain to the voters how the voters who are watching out there, why they should have confidence that their tax dollars are going to be used wisely and efficiently, and how do you go about ensuring that?
Well, the selectmen are the ultimate board for processing and pushing that budget forward. Early in the process, we get a tri-board meeting, the board of selectmen, the school committee, and the advisory committee, and we set a plan early, like in September, of where we want to go, where we want that town to go going forward, what goals we want, what things might need to be added to the budget that might not have been in the last year's budget, and especially the last 2 years during COVID, where we might need to make those big cuts with having lost revenue money coming in due to COVID. and we give our town manager and our finance director a plan on going forward over the next few months. And from that point, the town manager, Bill Keegan, wow, minute already, then starts his months-long process of trying to come in where we would like that budget to be. But ultimately, it's the Board of Selectmen that say, this is where we want that budget. And it's always a battle. It's a battle between, certainly taxes and the rise of taxes and giving back to the community the services that a lot of our townspeople want. And we can't forget that's police, fire, DPW, and just as importantly, our schools. Our schools are 48% of that budget. And that's why the school committee is just as important a part of the budgetary process as AdCom and the Board of Selectmen early in that process. Okay, yeah, here we go.
Did you have a follow-up question for either of the gentlemen?
Yeah, just to follow up on that, I'll ask you the proverbial loaded question. You both have experience in the budget process in Foxboro and in the budget. Is there any place right off the top of your head you think that Foxboro can cut, and any place you think that they might need more money?
You want me to go first?
And I'm sorry, and you can, I forget who was first, but whoever it is, please unmute yourself and feel free to answer my question. I've never had anybody ask me to unmute myself. They usually only ask me to mute myself.
Go ahead, Dennis.
Well, again, having been through many budget processes, certainly labor is always the biggest piece of the budget. So any efficiencies in that area, again, working cooperatively with the unions, certainly is a place you have to look at. There's great labor relations, there's labor peace. Those are real positives. This is a time where both parties might need to step up and really kind of step back and say, how can we together meet this challenge? So that's one area. The other area, low-hanging fruit, I'll call it. I don't like the term, but it's true. There's still discretionary spending in budgets. So you identify the discretionary spending where it's nice to have, but not necessarily absolutely needed when you get into these kind of circumstances. And that's where you go, what I call line item budgeting. You go through each budget line and you really ask the question, do you really need this for this coming year when it's going to be a tough year? Or do you need as much as you budgeted because you're not spending that much? So these are the budget techniques that I know I've used over the years very frequently.
Thank you. And Michelle, same question. Can you outline any areas that you think Foxboro maybe spends too much that could be cut, or any areas that you think it doesn't spend enough and might need a boost in funds?
I think we're, be honest with you, just right. I think we're smack dab in the middle. I don't think there's overspending by any means. As Dennis mentioned, one of the biggest costs to the town, whether it's school side or town side, is payroll. And most people on our payroll have unions. So negotiating with unions, Mike Johns this past 3 months have done a phenomenal job negotiating with all 7 unions and getting them on the town side, getting them into contracts for the next 3 years that we'll all be voting on at town meeting on May 9th. Watching that process is truly an incredible process. I think Dennis alluded to the fact that he's been in the middle of that process, and I just find it fascinating the give and take that has to go back and forth between the union reps and the town reps, more specifically, our labor council and Mike Johns, and that's always a battle, and that's going to be a good portion of any budget. But I don't think by any means we're overspending at all in the community. Not only does Bill Keegan, our town manager, go through every line item even before he presents it to us, the advisory committee does the same thing, and the Board of Selectmen do the same thing. We're going through every line item to see if there's anything that can be cut, that can be postponed, that can be put off, whether we need it or not.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I don't know who we go to next. Jen?
Yeah, our next round of questions goes to Mr. Elfman first, please.
Okay, Mr. Elfman, let me ask you this. Foxboro has always been a little bit ahead of this general area, when it comes to turnout at local elections. But it's still pretty low, considering what happens at presidential elections and things like that. What can you, as an individual select board member and the board as a whole, do to get more people, more voters to participate in choosing their local leaders? And please just unmute yourself.
Yeah, that's been a question that's been going on for an awful long time. And sadly, there's nothing like a good old controversy to bring people to the polls, be it national, state, in the Commonwealth itself, or as we can see in a little bit in our own community. There's 4 people running for 2 positions on the school committee, and that's raised a lot of interest in the community. Dennis and I are sort of forethoughts. It's all about the school committee race, and I think there's going to be a good turnout for that because of the very interesting race that we're going to have over the rest of the 2 weeks. I know I'm staying online. I'm going to listen to the gentleman as this continues on. I don't know if there's more that a selectman can do to get voters out to vote, other than, especially if there's no real contest out there. Sometimes I take the optimistic view that if a lot of people aren't out there voting, they're very comfortable with what's going on in the community and don't feel that there's a need to, raise a lot of questions because they're comfortable with how Foxboro is running and the school system, and there's no controversy. Well said.
Thank you very much. Mr. Keefe, same question. Foxboro's always been a little bit ahead of the general area when it comes to percentage of turnout at local elections, but it's still pretty low compared to what happens on the national elections or things like that. What can you as an individual select board member and the board as a whole do to get more voters to participate in choosing their local leaders?
Well, again, as a newcomer to the town, I do bring those fresh eyes and perspectives where, I might see things that people that have been here for many, many years, don't recognize anymore. And I can kind of point it out. And we have to find ways of engaging better with the community by all effective means, whether it's, print media or TV or cable or other mechanisms to really get the community more engaged in understanding what the challenges are, what we're doing about the challenges, and really how we need their input to help us meet the need. I'm very much aware of the controversy, playing out with the school committee. It sounds like it's mostly mask related. So we don't want to generate a controversy to get more people to the polls, but, it happens. But I think Foxboro has an awful lot to offer. I said, it had many attributes: very friendly community, very clean, accessible town government. You have Patriot Place, which is unique, everything at your fingertips, everything in walking distance, great faith community, great restaurants. Uniquely, you have a stadium in your midst that really has to be managed in a lot of ways by the town of Foxboro. And you have world-class healthcare, right at Patriot Place and Partners and the Dana-Farber. So all of these attributes speak to the strength and the future of Foxboro. And I think we have to connect to every one of the residents to make sure they know what's going on here and they can help support that continued success and growth in the future by showing up at the polls and having good candidates.
Great, thank you. Bill, do you have a follow-up for that, or do you want to move on to the third question?
No, I think we can move on to the third question if that's okay with you.
Go right ahead. This one again, start with Mr. Keefe, please.
Okay, Mr. Keefe, I'm going to, after two questions on that, and since you guys are unopposed, I'm going to go to a little bit of a different question. You folks are running unopposed for your offices. Given that, doing something a little different, please tell the citizens out there watching something about yourself that most of them probably don't know, but probably should.
Well, there's a number of things, but I'll kind of focus on the issue of the day, and that is my public health background. I was Commissioner of Public Health for the city of Cambridge for 11 years, and now I'm working at Clark University, and it's all about COVID mitigation and prevention, and really, working with the community in terms of how do we keep everyone safe? Because when you have a public health orientation and perspective, it's all about safety in the community. So I do bring that on the ground experience with COVID-19. I hate to say it, but it's true now for 3 years, that I can bring to Foxboro and really kind of get at these issues in terms of how do we live with this virus going forward? So I have that background, I have that experience. I think we're at the point where the community spread is minimized. I think we're increasingly learning to live with the virus. And I think we just have to build on that knowledge and that success and really get to a better place where I don't think we're close to it being the flu, but I think we're close to it being manageable and at a point where I like to say, in terms of masks, to be a little controversial, a mask policy that is not mandatory, but encourages and welcomes mask wearing. But beyond that, they're not required, and it becomes a personal choice.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Elfman, same question to you. Again, try to do something a little different. Tell everybody out there, if after 6 years there's anybody out there who doesn't know everything about you now, but tell the people out there something maybe that they don't know about you that they probably should. Go ahead and unmute.
Yeah, what a lot of people might not know about me is I also have a degree in pharmacy. I'm also a registered pharmacist. Went to Mass College of Pharmacy in Boston, graduated after 5 years. It's a 5-year program with Bachelor of Science in pharmacy. I practiced pharmacy out in the real world for about 3 years, and then decided to go back to graduate school to become a chiropractor. But having that pharmacy degree has really never left me. I've been able to use that degree every day, whether it was working as a part-time pharmacist in graduate school, working as a part-time pharmacist to make some extra cash when I was first opening up my practice and getting it up and running. And even today, just the knowledge that I have and continue to, through continuing ed, use that, bring that knowledge into my practice every day and bring it into the community. I think it was a helpful, same as Dennis, having that extra something during the COVID crisis, extra knowledge helped quite a bit. But I guess that's the one little thing people might not know about me. I'm all set, Pam.
Beautiful, thank you. Okay, any last follow-up for our two candidates, Bill?
Nope, I think those were great answers. I thank them very much for allowing me to question them, and good luck to both of them.
Okay, great.
Thank you
Would
all.
would either of you might like to make a closing statement before we move on to our next section of the program?
I'm good.
No, I'm good. I think when I talked about the attributes of Foxboro, that was kind of my closing statement. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you to both of you candidates. It's been great to have you both here. We greatly appreciate your participation, and we appreciate you both running for these important roles. Have a great evening and good luck to you on Election Day.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Okay, our next segment, we have Miss Christine Igo Freeman. She is running unopposed for a third term as our Boyden Library trustee. Christine, we thank you for being here to share your platform regarding this year's election. You have up to 3 minutes for your statement. Whenever you're ready, unmute yourself and go right ahead.
Thank you, Pam. First of all, I'd like to thank you and the Jaycees and Foxboro Cable for hosting tonight. I think it's a great opportunity. Like you said, I'm running unopposed, but I wanted to come on and just thank the voters for their continued support of myself as a trustee and my fellow trustees and also the Boyden Library. My biggest reason for coming on tonight too was to say that we have a lot of exciting things going on at the library right now. We've just hired a brand new library director. And if you haven't had a chance to swing by the library, I encourage you to do so and meet our new director. Also, we're very fortunate to have a wonderful staff at our library. I think a library is only as strong as the staff who works there, and our staff is truly amazing day in and day out, but especially given the past few years with COVID, they allowed our library to open and remain open when several libraries across the state closed and remain closed and were not able to provide any services to their patrons. So our staff has past and present continue to serve the community in a very special way. There is one thing though that I think we are missing at our library, and that is something we've put in every year in our budget, and we would like to hire a young adult librarian. And basically a young adult librarian is exactly that. It's meant for the teens. So teens are not just simply older children. Teens can be on the younger side from say 13 to 15, and the older side from 16 to 18. So it's a very unique population and with unique needs, and a young adult librarian would be able to fulfill those needs. And it's a need that has been left unmet, and I feel that it's something that we really need to support, not only as a library, but as a town, because our teens are very important and could benefit from such a skilled individual. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us here this evening. Have a great evening and good luck with the library for next year.
Thank you.
All right. I would like to take just a moment here now to mention the other candidates who will be on the May 2nd ballot who were not able to join us this evening and who are all running unopposed. Running for another term as moderator is Francis Spillane. Ronald P. Bressi is running for re-election to the Planning Board for another three-year term. Robert A. Decker is running for a 3-year term on the Board of Assessors. Incumbent Robert T. Garber is running for another term on the Board of Water and Sewer Commissioners. And running uncontested for another term as Town Clerk is Robert E. Cutler, Jr., who, if you were able to be here this evening, would, I doubt not, remind you that the election will be held Monday, May 2nd, and that the annual town meeting is a week after that on May 9th. Okay, it is time now for the school committee candidates. We have 4 candidates seeking to fill the 2 open seats for the very important school committee. Please welcome our incumbents, Rob Canfield and Brent Reuter, and our challengers, Matt Light and Joseph Pyrese. Although I don't see, is Joe not here yet? Oh, there he is. He just popped on. Okay, I thank all four of you for being here this evening. Now, as we mentioned earlier, each of you will be allowed a statement of 2 to 3 minutes, and then Bill will ask each of you some questions with possibly some follow-ups, and then you may each offer a closing statement of no more than 2 minutes. Please also try to keep your responses to Bill's questions to no more than 2 minutes and follow-up responses to 1 minute. And keep an eye on me as timekeeper as well. I will be signaling you to let you know when you have 1 minute left, when you have 30 seconds left, and when you've reached your time. I'll also try and put it up in the chat box if you have that open. As there was no way to draw from a hat or do a coin flip for the four of you, we will have our opening statements and questions done by alphabetical order by last name. And then subsequent questions will just rotate the order. Closing statements will be in reverse alphabetical order. So that means that for our opening statements, Rob will start, followed by Matt, Joe, and Brent. And as always, if until it is your turn to speak, please remain muted, and then remember to unmute yourself before you do speak. Christine, if you could mute yourself as well, please, that would be greatly appreciated. All right, time to get started. Rob, you are up first by dint of being alphabetical, and you may begin when ready.
Thank you very much, Pam. Thanks for facilitating this evening. And as the other candidates have already said, I want to thank the Jaycees and Foxboro Cable for putting this together. We know it's a time-consuming task, but we also know that it's something that our town has historically really appreciated, getting the opportunity to know all the candidates, regardless of the office that they're running for. So just way of brief introduction, my name is Rob Canfield. I'm a 28-year resident of Foxboro. We moved here in 1994. I have my wife, Laura, who many people know in town. She's very active at St. Mary's. She's very active in our schools. She has her own theater production company, and I have 4 children, all of who have attended at some point during their school careers, Foxboro Public Schools. I've spent the past 3 years as a member of the school committee. Prior to that, I spent 3 years on the advisory committee. You heard Dennis talk earlier about what that experience did and preparing him for a role on the select board. I will echo that. I felt that the 3 years I spent on advisory committee gave me a great foundation in the way our town government works, the way our town budgeting process works. I was a liaison on the advisory committee to the Department of Public Works, as well as the school committee. So we had firsthand knowledge reviewing the budgets line by line, as Dennis talked about, with Bill Yukna, with Debbie Spinelli, who was the superintendent at the time, and Amy, who is our current superintendent. Mr. Reuter was also a member of that subcommittee, or that was also a liaison to the from the AdCom to the school committee. So again, great foundation for anybody that's interested in getting involved in town government. Highly recommend doing a little bit of time with the advisory committee, because it's like I said, it's fundamental and it's foundational. So a little bit about myself and what's motivating me to run for a second term. One, I love education. I have always valued education. For my children, for myself, it's been a passion of mine since I was a child. Second, as I said, I've had 4 children that have gone through the public schools. 3 of them, my last one is graduating this year. And I know what our schools have done to prepare them to go out into the world and whatever is next for them. Our schools, along with our community as a whole, because that's what it takes to make a successful child or to develop a successful child. Schools, family, community, all of that is critical for child development. I know the experience that my kids have had, and I'm very proud of the education they've received. I'm very proud of the community that they've grown up in, and I want every parent in Foxboro to be able to say the same thing about their children. I also fundamentally believe in a balanced budget. We've been very successful with our schools. We have great business manager. And I also believe in a collaborative effort between the school committee and our administration.
Thank you very much. Up next is Matt Light. Mr. Light, it is your turn. You have 3 minutes whenever you're ready to begin.
Thank you, Pam. Listen, I want to say thank you to the Jaycees and Foxboro Cable Access and, giving us a voice and being able to address people that maybe we haven't met within the community. My wife, Susie, and I moved to Foxboro in 2004 officially, and we've raised all 4 of our kids in the community. We are truly blessed. We're transplants from the Midwest. We recognize everything that Foxboro represents within the community, keeping a small town feel while doing things at a very big level. And as it relates to the school system, our 4 kids have thrived. And I have a daughter that graduated from Foxboro High in 2020. I have 2 boys that are currently in the high school. And we have our youngest who is at the Borough. And, I would say that so many things that have happened over the last 2 years have helped shape, my views and my opinion on what matters most. I think we've all done that over the last couple of years for many reasons. I've always had a push to serve, and I've always had a servant's mentality. Maybe that's what happens when you're an offensive lineman. I don't know. It's not about us. It's about the group. It's about the team. And I love being a part of the team. And I love working really hard for the things that I believe in. But I also believe that everyone has a voice and that we have to recognize those voices. And I've had a lot of conversations with people in my own circles and beyond. And I think that, there are definitely reasons that I am getting involved now that probably wouldn't have happened 5 years ago. I wouldn't have had this mindset. So why am I getting involved now? Why do I want to serve as a school committee member? I think number one, I love to not just serve, but I love to do things with people that are also serving. And that's what it takes to be on the school committee. It's not something that you do for personal gain. It's not something that you do for any other reason other than you enjoy what it represents. And that what it represents for us and my family is that we can see the continued success of Foxboro schools. And that's what I want to see. I want to be a part of that. You look at what's happening with the Borough School. You look at the other improvements that are going to happen, for our kids in this community, and you have to get excited. So I want to bring that attitude. I want to bring, a willingness to work with everyone, to listen to everyone, and to, really ensure that, again, our kids get the best education they can, because they have. And there's so much to get excited for here in Foxboro. I appreciate the opportunity to have the support of so many that have happened so far in this run. Like I said, I look forward to the challenge. I stand for what I believe in, and I'll work with everybody that I can to make sure that we do what's in the best interest of our kids and their education. And the focus on the education, I think, is the most important thing that we can do. There's a lot of things that can, get clouded. There's a lot of other things that can come into the room, but as a school committee member, we have 3 roles. Those roles are clearly outlined. I want to stick to what the budget says. I want to stick to what the policies say. And I want to make sure that we have the best leadership out there and we empower them to do what they've been doing for a long time, and that's succeed. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and I look forward to serving.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker will be Joe Pyrese. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you. I'd just like to echo what everybody else said. Say thank you to the Jaycees and the Foxboro community for putting this event on. My name is Joe Pyrese. I'm running for one of the 2 contested school committee seats here in Foxboro. I grew up in Massachusetts. I went to a public regional school. I received a Bachelor of Science degree in construction management from Wentworth Institute of Technology. I landed a great career after that. I met my wife 18 years ago at Wentworth. We moved to Foxboro 10 years ago. I have a 7-year-old daughter at the Taylor School in the 1st grade, and she absolutely loves going to school every day. I love spending as much time with her as possible. It's partly why I'm her hockey coach. As project executive, I lead teams of about 15 people at any given time. Leadership is a prerequisite for my position at work. I manage about $50 million a year. I focus on quality, schedule, and forecasting budgets and costs. I'm great at finding waste, and I look forward to the opportunity to review the full school budget in the future. I got involved with the current school committee because of the masks issue. After 2 years, we now know cloth masks are not part of any solution, and children should not have been made to wear them in schools. This should have always been a parent's choice. And I want to emphasize that this should have always been a parent's decision to send their children to school wearing a mask or not. Inherently, I'm a forecaster, like I mentioned above, and I'm forecasting this topic to rear its ugly head again soon, probably in the fall. The school committee at one time openly admitted that they didn't want any responsibility and was glad that the state had stepped in to dictate the rules. To me, that's not leadership, and it made me question some of the motives of the committee. Today in schools, we talk too much about skin color, identity, race, feelings, and lately we're talking way too much about sex. This has to stop. We need to get back to teaching scholastic subjects. We're ditching academics in the name of social justice or equity. All of those previously mentioned topics need to be taken up with parents and guardians in the privacy of their own homes. The school system does not own our children, and parents need to speak up, as I'm doing now. We don't need expensive programs to tell us how special our kids are. We already know that they are special. We are to treat all kids with dignity and respect. It doesn't matter what they look like or what they identify as. And I want to emphasize this again. We treat all kids with dignity and respect. The Foxboro school system is ranked 50% in the state. And that's pretty good. But we could do better if we started teaching our kids scholastic subjects. Let's strive to become number 1 and not 121. I'm here to bring common sense back to Foxboro. Let's start using a bit of common sense together as a community and get our schools whipped back into shape. So I thank you to be here. Thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you very much, Joe. And our final speaker for the opening statements will be Brent Reuter. Welcome.
Thank you very much. And to continue echoing everybody's thanks, I am so delighted that the Jaycees were able to put this on. It's a time-honored tradition, and it's not easy to do when we have people scattered around. So I want to thank them and FCA for stepping up and helping the community hear from the candidates directly and those standing for public office directly. It's wonderful. And thank you also, Bill and Pam, for making this night possible as well. So I'm Brent Reuter, and I'm running for a second 3-year term on the Foxboro School Committee. Prior to that, as Mr. Canfield alluded to, I was on the advisory committee for 3 years. My liaison areas were police, DPW, and in the school system. So prior to joining school committee, I spent 3 years combing through those budgets as well as all the other departments in town, all the warrants, all the policy changes, talking to the leaders and those folks working in those departments, just as a friend in town gleefully put, just kind of kick the tires of town government and see how everything runs. And it's one heck of an education, and I encourage anybody in town to do it. They always need folks. So once I joined school committee, I get to continue on working on those budgets and policies, and so it was an easy transition. I'm running for re-election for 3 reasons that brought me to the school committee in the first place, and there's one new one, and I'll enumerate those. First, I love all aspects of education. I'm a lifelong public school teacher. There was about a 10-year hiatus where I wasn't teaching public schools. I worked in educational nonprofits, specifically in different countries that had big gaps between the numbers of boys and girls who were allowed to go to school, and we worked on that. And then also training science teachers to be hands-on, engaged, practical teachers rather than just sticking to the book. I also have run educational nonprofits, and now I'm back teaching full-time middle school in Newton. I teach engineering. I have a wood shop attached to my classroom. It's wonderful. Second, I love public policy. I'm a policy geek, wonk, just interested party, if you want to call it that. My master's degree is in public policy and policy analysis. I have the lion's share of a doctorate in that. Decided not to finish. My quality of life went way up. And thirdly, I love this town. Foxboro is our adopted home. We have no plans on leaving. And the community really opened up its arms and embraced me and my two kids and my wife. We're originally from Minnesota. Much like Matt, we're transplants, and there's no other place I want to be. As soon as I moved to town, I started coaching right away. I have been coaching ever since. And I don't plan on stopping that either. And then I also got involved in town government because I love all of those things. So thank you for the opportunity to hear what I'm about. And I will take any question from anybody, as I hope folks in town know. I have a website. It's www.rooterforfoxboro.org. And you can post a question there and I'll answer it, or I'll just call you. Thanks.
Great. Thank you all, gentlemen. Now it's time for our columnist, Mr. Bill Gouveia. Always nervous about saying that. To go ahead and ask your first question, and we'll do the first round in the same order as our opening speeches. So, Rob, you go first with the first question.
Okay. Mr. Canfield, let me, all you folks be asked the same question, and congratulations on running, and thank you for donating your time. As someone who's done it for almost 5 decades now, I have a keen appreciation. So thank you very much for your services and offering your services. Talk to me about the current school system, specifically because you are running to set the policies for it. What are the strengths and weaknesses you see of the Foxboro system? What's the strongest thing the system has going for it right now? And where will you make a difference, suggesting improvements in areas that maybe you think need improvement? And please be as specific as possible and unmute yourself, and we will listen.
Thank you. Pam, 2 minutes? Okay, thank you very much. So thank you for the question, Bill. I appreciate it. It's easy to talk about our schools, particularly when we talk about the strengths of the schools. As I've said, and as Matt referred to earlier, we have 3 primary functions as a school committee: policy, budget oversight, and then oversight of the administration. In all 3 of those areas, I feel like Foxboro is high performing. We have a very strong budget process. We have a budget subcommittee. We work the advisory committee. We are level funded year after year. We do not cut services. We have consistently returned money to the town at the end of every fiscal year. We've maintained our class sizes. And this past year and a half, even with all that's been going on in the world with the pandemic, we have stayed within budget. We've been able to bring services in town for some of our out of districts special education students. We've been able to bring them back into district by being able to provide the services that they need in district. That is a significant advantage to our budget to be able to do that. So budget is something I'm very proud of. On a policy standpoint, we have a very strong legal counsel. We work very closely with our administration to make sure that our policies are in line with Mass DESE. And when we need to make adjustments to the policy, we go through a thorough review of the policy to make the adjustments as necessary. And then finally, oversight of the administration. We have an administration that is driven by data and facts, and tends to always make a decision based on how it aligns with our strategic vision for the district. We just introduced a new strategic vision into this past summer. We had that vision through 2025, and all of that was based on evidence and data about what we know is happening in our schools, what we know we want to prepare our students for, and what services they need to be successful as they enter the world.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Matt, same question. Matt will speak next.
All right, Mr. White, thank you very much for being here. And same question to you. Talk to me about the current school system, specifically because you are running to set the policies for it. What are the strengths and weaknesses you see of the current system? What's the strongest thing the school system has going for it right now? And where can you make a difference by suggesting improvements for areas you think need them? Please be specific, and please unmute yourself, and we'll be happy to hear your answer.
Thank you, Bill. Look, I think the strengths are many. And matter of fact, it's hard to come up with a lot of weaknesses or a weakness that would outweigh what we see as parents and community members. I think the Foxborough school system does a phenomenal job, number one, of communication. My wife and I, we don't have a whole lot of questions as to the things that are impacting our kids or what to expect or how things are going to work out, what to look forward to. They do a phenomenal job. And that's across the board. All of the teachers and the administration, they keep us very well informed, and that's comforting for all of us parents. I would also say the IEPs, there's special services that we have benefited from, our family, our children. And those aren't easy things to do. And to sit down and talk to parents and make them feel comfortable about the ways that their child can potentially suffer with certain things, but here are how we're going to structure this to ensure that, your son or your daughter will have the best chance to succeed within our environment. And I got to thank each and every one of them for the job that they do in that realm. I also have to say, as a parent with kids in the music program, it is second to none. And I come from a very musical family. My mother taught music for 35 years, and she would echo that sentiment as well. So thank you to all of them. What can we improve on? I think there's always things that we can improve on. And I think that the most important aspect to our school system is the education. And I want to make sure and ensure that focus is always on what we can do in those core subjects. And to the degree that we can, really challenge our children. I want to know that our kids, my kids, are being pushed to be the best that they can possibly be. And so the focus really does have to stay entirely on those programs that will set them up for the real world. And as long as we can keep that the focus, and I think we've done a phenomenal job, they have done a phenomenal job to date, we'll be right on track to continue to see the growth.
Thank you, Matt. May I second your comment about the music program? They always open our concert series every summer. They will be doing again this year, and always look forward to hearing them. Our next question goes to Joe.
Thank you. Ms. Pires, welcome. Same question to you. Talk to me about the current school system specifically, because you are running to set the policies for it. What are the strengths and weaknesses of it? What is the strongest thing the system has going for it that you see? And where can you make a difference suggesting improvements for areas that you think need improving? Please be specific and unmute, and we'll be glad to listen.
I can only speak to what I've noticed and what families have told me about the school system as I'm doing this campaign. As you know, I mentioned I have a daughter in the first grade at the Taylor School. My knowledge is pretty limited on the other schools. I'll just openly admit that. One thing that the Taylor School and the principal does there that's great is that they do a great job at communicating. I can tell you my daughter loves going to school every day. There's probably no policy changes that I might change. I shouldn't say that. No, there might be some policy changes that I would change in the elementary school and the elementary schools across Foxboro. But I have limited information, I guess, for the high school and the middle school on policy itself. So I can only judge based on what I know from the Taylor School. I have spoken to families in the high school and in the middle school, and they have some of the same sentiment that Rob and Matt had said, that they love the schools, they like their teachers. So I have some homework to do with respect to the strengths and weaknesses. But one thing I can tell you is that I am a professional. I have gotten far where I'm at in my line of work, and I'm going to dig my heels in and really get to the root of a lot of the great things that our school system is doing and some of the things that may change or need to change in the future. I think my time is up.
Yes, thank you. And our final answer to that same question goes to Mr. Brent.
Thank you, Mr. Reuter. Again, welcome to you. And by now you've probably got the question memorized, but I'll say it again anyway.
Appreciate
Talk
it.
to me about the current school system, specifically because you're running for the seat that sets the policies for it.
Right.
What are the strengths and the weaknesses of it? What's the strongest thing the system has going for it? And where can you make a difference suggesting improvements for areas where you think they need them? And please be as specific as possible and go right ahead.
No, thank you. It's a great multi-part question, and it gets to the heart of the matter. In terms of current strengths, there are some of the same things that brought me and my family to Foxboro and are what keep us here and delighted and feeling very blessed to be here. Those include the range of academic programming, the depth of and variety of things that students can get their hands and minds into in their course over their time in our schools. The range of services that we provide to students who learn differently and may need a different host of supports. Obviously, the flagship programs in the music, the arts, and in terms of even in the field of tech, which is continuing to grow. In terms of, I guess, well, no, let me move on from there. Other things that not a lot of people see, but I had firsthand account of both on AdCom and now on school committee, is how genuinely open-minded the administration is to questions and to new approaches to things. And Mr. Canfield and I found that firsthand when we joined the school committee, and actually the nature and scope of the strategic goals changed quite a bit owing to the current slate and the current administration, their willingness to take a hard look at how we were doing things, and shows the strength of the current system. Also, and other people alluded this to tonight as well, as in the with the select board, the no drama approach to budgets. I've lived in communities that lurched from highs to lows asking for overrides, and that's not Foxboro. We are not built that way. And in terms of needs, Mr. Pyres mentioned earlier that we're 50th. Why aren't we higher? The reason is that we're not higher is because there's groups of students that we don't actually reach that well compared to how we reach other ones. That is the reason why our district isn't rated even higher than we think it might be. And so the current strategic goals really hit that head on. So my advice moving forward and how I'd like to continue impacting policy is to stay the course and to focus on our current strategic goals, which are all about collecting data on those groups of students that we are not reaching fully, and designing and continuing to design specialized programming to reach them. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill, did you have any follow-ups to this particular question, or would you like to move on to your next topic?
Just one quick follow-up. Maybe we can get a quick answer, because you always try to get as many specifics out of these things as you can, and they're very rare sometimes. So I just gave each of you school committee candidates the magic school committee wand. You can change one thing in your school system. You can add money, you can change curriculum, you can do whatever you want. I just gave you the magic wand. You got one thing. Quick, tell us what it is that you're going to do with your magic wand.
Okay, 1 minute each. We'll start with Rob.
That's me again. So since you threw money into that pool, like I said, certainly we're very proud of the budget process. We're very proud of how that budget is managed. We're very proud of how the school spends. We can always use more resources, right? We want to make sure our teachers have what they need. We want to make sure our students have the resources they need. I don't have specifics on that. I know this year has been tough with some of the teacher contract negotiations because we were limited based on the town funding. I would love to be able to take some additional funds and put them to some of our contract negotiations.
Okay, Matt, same thing. What would you do with your magic wand? 1 minute, please.
I love the idea of a magic wand. So if we're going to stay in the magical realm, and this would be, something that is near and dear to my heart, I would love to see us have the ability to take the kids that we're serving and get them outside of the school to interact with CEOs and business leaders and people that are innovative and creative, and let them see firsthand what it's like. And, you know, you think about these trade schools and the importance of the trades today, and letting kids know that, you know, college may not be for you for a million reasons, but guess what? Here's some amazing things that we can show you today that you can work towards in the future. And we can do that in our public school systems. It's not easy, but if I have a magic wand, I would like to make that a priority. And I think it goes right in line with this curriculum that could reach kids that maybe don't learn as well in a classroom setting. Maybe it's more difficult for them to engage and do the things in that environment, but you get them outside there and you really see those things click. And we do that through the Light Foundation. It's something that I love doing. We've served kids in that capacity for 20 years, and we've seen the effects that it has there. So that would be my magic wand moment.
Great, thank you. Joe?
That's a pretty good magic wand moment. Mine's a little bit simpler. I would just get back to I would have a strong focus on a scholastic approach to our public schools. I would get back to reading, writing, arithmetic, and history. And I would put some of the other extracurricular activities with respect to a lot of the social, emotional teachings that we're doing now. I would like to put those aside and get back to real teaching. That would be my magic wand moment.
Great, thank you. And finally, Brent, you get your minute to have your magic wand.
Sure. And nice magic wand moments prior. I would say part of my answer would be in direct opposition to Mr. Pyries in that I would like to use the magic wand to move forward in time with the current planning and groundwork that so many of educators and families in Boston have been part of making reality and creating a school system that is a safe place for all kids to learn, because the data and common sense tells us that when a kid feels comfortable in school and is happy to go to school and trust the people around them and trust their educators, that they actually learn a lot more, a lot quicker. So my magic wand moment would take the goals that are currently in place, that were put in place in the last 3 years, and move us forward in time. And then with more magic juice in that wand, if there's any left over, I echo both what Mr. Canfield and Mr. Light had said, because those are two great places to put our resources, both in terms of experiential learning and obviously fairly rewarding our teachers for all their exceptionally hard work. Thank you.
Great, thank you, gentlemen. Okay, Bill, next question. This round, we're going to start with Joe.
Okay, very good. Mr. Pyries, you folks may not be aware of this, but apparently masks have become an issue in this campaign, even though they're no longer required locally on a state level. In your opinion, are masks a medical issue? Are they an educational issue? Or are they more a social and political issue? And since mask requirements were primarily instituted on a state and national level, isn't this more of a state and national issue? And Ms. Pyries, please go ahead, unmute yourself.
It's a local issue, I mean, I guess it's a national issue too, but it really drills down to a local issue here. And you say that, well, we don't have to mask anymore because the governments say that we don't have to. But what I'm doing here is I'm never going to forget what this school committee and partly the state did to our kids. So that's one thing that a lot of parents here in the Foxboro community will just never forget. And I won't let them forget it. It's sending your child to school every day wearing a mask and knowing that, after 2 years of, in 2 years, we've learned a lot about masking, and we now know how to protect ourselves so we can keep everybody safe. And again, I'm forecasting what's coming in the future. I mentioned in my opening statement that I think sometime in the fall, I'm just predicting, I'm just seeing the writing on the wall, that we're going to have the same conversation again. So I want to be very transparent with everybody here in Foxboro about where my stance is. It should have been a parent's choice. Children should, if they want to wear masks to school, they should be allowed to. But we have a lot of safeguards in place now. We have early testing, right? When you're sick, you stay home. We have gene therapy medicines. We have antivirals. We have early treatment protocols. We have all these things in place now that can combat this virus that's going around. People have educated themselves, and I think the community now needs to understand that there's a large population of people who don't want to wear masks because of the science that they've read. And I think as a community, we just have to understand that. I'm not judgmental on anybody who wants to wear one, and they shouldn't be judgmental on parents and families who decide not to wear them.
Thank you, Joe. Our next person to answer will be Brent.
Thank you.
Mr. Ritter, go ahead. If you don't need the question repeated, I don't have to repeat it. So,
Thanks, Bill. Sorry, I apologize for jumping in there. So, are they a medical issue or political issue? I believe they are a medical issue that has unfortunately become politicized, like many things. And I think I would probably join hand in hand with all families everywhere in regretting when something that should be left to the scientific realm becomes politicized one way or another, no matter where you stand, because it just muddies the waters. And in terms of if it's an issue, state, local, national, international, whatever you want to say, I favor the, at least from my viewpoint, the approach that the district took all along, which is to look at all the data from all levels, and basically collect them all and collect the advice from all levels, and that includes the school associated doctor, school nurses, public board of health in Foxboro, on through Norfolk County, on up to the state, on up to the feds, and beyond. But I believe, at least from my standpoint and where I was sitting, that the district administration and the school committee had done that. For my part, I read lots and lots because that's the way I approach the world, and I need to see the studies myself, and that's just my own personal approach. And I did that, and I would continue to do that if something came up again where masking was part of a host of recommendations. I'd want to look at it fresh again, and I think that's only fair. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Up next is Matt White.
Yeah, so look, I think fear is something that is hard to ignore, and I think that for so many of us in the beginning of this pandemic, we try to do everything we could to mitigate the risk and the unknown, and as we progress through it, some of us, the fear became less with the knowledge and the data that we were able to collect, and it wasn't easy, and it was difficult, and you had to really look. And I think for my wife and I, we decided to, the only time in our kids' lives that they were in the public Foxboro public school system was that first year, the 2020-2021 season. That was difficult for us, but we had to make that decision, and we decided to do that because we felt that our kids could go to school with masks and without masks. What I can tell you is that their experience was incredible. They didn't experience any more rate of infection. They went to school without masks on. They were able to see their teachers, interact with them. But I think for a lot of kids, it was very difficult. I think that difficulty was felt by the parents. And I think that there were a large majority of parents that started to become less fearful and started to gain the real knowledge and thought going into this school year that we wouldn't wear masks. And I think they were very disappointed that they did. But what about now? That's the real question. What do we do now? Forget about the data. Forget about your opinion on the mask. I don't feel the need to wear a mask anywhere. Our country is now opening up. And I would say this: what can we learn? And I think as a school committee, it's extremely important that we look at everything that we did well, but more importantly, what we can improve on. And that's going to take a lot of effort and a lot of work. And that's something that we have to do, because I can tell you this much. I come from areas and have been to areas where masks were never worn, and their numbers are no worse or better than what we experienced. So there is another way to do it. And there were a lot of schools that did it another way. What can we learn from them? Because in the future, we need to have a really good response that incorporates everyone's viewpoints the right way and that they're heard.
You're on mute, Pam, but I got the question.
Thank you, Matt. Rob, yes, you are the final.
I think it's my
answer to
turn
that
now,
question.
right? So,
Yes.
Bill, I appreciate the question. Clearly, there are many discussions going on around, mask, people's feelings on mask. I think it's important to take a step back and look at what was happening last fall. When the state did come down with their mandate that students, that everyone in a school would be wearing a mask until the school reached a certain vaccination level. Our committee was in the process of developing a policy to address the wearing of masks in schools, identifying when a mask was required, when a mask wouldn't be required, what kind of exceptions or deferrals would be made regarding masks, how they would be handled. And what I took from that process was we had 5 people on a committee that were taking advice from, as Brent said, local health officials, local educational officials, county, state, federal officials, public health experts, epidemiologists, pediatric public health specialist, giving us information on what was appropriate, because our goal was to make sure that our kids could be in school together as much as possible, because we didn't want to have to be in a hybrid learning situation again. And at the time, our committee had 5 different voices with 5 different opinions. And what we had was healthy discourse among the committee around what our policy should be, what was the best thing for the entire school community, and what was the best thing for the community as a whole. Because kids, teachers, building staff don't just spend 24 hours a day in a school. They come to school, they then go out amongst the community, among their family. We had to protect everyone because we wanted our kids to be in school as much as possible, because that was the critical element to making sure that we could get our kids back on track.
There we go. Thank you very much. Bill, did you have a follow-up for any of the gentlemen regarding that question?
Yeah, I think it was stated, I think by Mr. Pires, that the school committee or the school department did something in a negative sense to the children of Foxboro. Regardless of masks or opinions on masks or anything else, I think that's a very serious statement. And Ms. Pires, I want to see if you stand by that, if I heard it correctly. And I want to ask all the candidates, do you believe, is it your opinion that the school committee or school department in Foxboro did something to students in the last year or two?
Okay, one minute for follow-up.
I guess I'd have to go back and look at the tape, and maybe I did say that. I felt as though, as a concerned parent, when I went to the school committee, that they weren't listening to me and a lot of other parents. When I went multiple times and voiced my opinions, everything fell on deaf ears. We brought calculated data, we brought engineered control methods, and it all just went in one ear and out the other. So maybe I have a different opinion on how the school committee, the current school committee, handled it. Did they do something? I think that they didn't listen. So I think, Bill, that might be what I'm getting at there. They didn't listen to me and a lot of other parents who voiced an alternative opinion to what they were telling us.
Great. Thank you. Brent, did you want to follow up?
Sure. I think, thank you. My take on it is that the schools everywhere did the best that they could with a tough situation, and their own analysis, their own community look, as well as meshing in directives from many different localities, let's put it that way. And in terms of the impact on students, the pandemic hit everybody incredibly hard, parents, students, community members, doesn't matter who you were. And I believe that Foxboro kids fared, at least the data is suggesting, fared better than many. And our whole crux this last year coming out of COVID is to assess and see where gaps are and to do our best to meet and mitigate those. In terms of Mr. Pyre's comments, I can say for my part that I listened intently to everybody. When people were available after the meeting, I tried to speak to them and request some data be sent to me. Some people in town were kind enough to do that, and I incorporated that into my own analysis. And that's all I guess I can say about that. Thank you.
Okay. Matt, how did you respond to the follow-up? And remember, it's 1 minute on these follow-up questions.
Sure. Yeah, look, the school committee did something. They made a decision as it relates to how they were going to address DESE and the mandate. And I think for me, I felt as though it wasn't the right decision, right? And the beauty of having a system and a committee and people that represent us in the community is that if you don't agree with it, then do something. Don't just talk about it. And again, I would have to say that if you look at the schools, and I would say if you get away from the coast in our country, you would see outside of New England, outside of our region, that the vast majority of schools in the more rural settings, maybe, right, did not wear masks. And I would have said, if I was on that committee, how are they doing it? What are they doing it? What can we learn from? Because what I do know, and what was not addressed, was the negative impact that was happening on our kids, and that was real. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Canfield, how do you respond to that? 1 minute, please.
As I said, our goal at the start of the school year was to take a mitigated strategy to make sure we could get our kids and keep our kids in a classroom as much as possible. We consistently, as I said earlier, looked at data. We took data from, again, public health experts, pediatric medical experts, education experts, and we were prepared to make a decision for our own schools in regards to what that policy should be when the state came down with their mandate. We have always, as I said earlier, we have always used data, both from our own district as well as comparable districts locally and districts nationally, to say, what are we doing and what we could do better, right? If we are in a situation like this again, where we have a decision that is potentially disruptive to education, we will use data again to say what is the right course of action for our students, for our educators, and for our community as a whole.
Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, Bill, time for the next topic. And this time around, we start with Matt Light.
Okay, great. Mr. Light, after going through a pandemic and all that's accompanied it, and we're not through it yet, but we're still going through it, but in the last 2 years, how do you see the role of the school committee perhaps changing, or does it remain the same? What challenges are presented to school committees today that maybe require a different approach, and how would you bring that about?
So, I think fundamentally, a lot of things are going to go back to where they should be, where they were. As a school committee, and I guess maybe this is more hopeful than practical, but my hope is that we're going to return to a sense of normalcy, that, we will have a school committee focused on, the education of our children and, doing what the school committee does. And we know what those 3 areas are, but I think Foxborough and the leadership has always gone above and beyond that, and that we will be able to make an impact where it's needed most. I think that there are going to be challenges coming out of this. And as I just noted, we need to make sure that we are ready for those and that we have a good analysis of what actually took place and how that's going to impact us in the future. But to your question, Bill, I think that as a school committee, we're going to get back to doing what is most important. I think we're going to be able to move past this. I think that the things that we did learn on this is that there are a lot of voices in our community, and that's actually a good thing. And I think people are looking at that more today. I know that I am. I know that I felt very compelled to do more. I mean, we've been given so much, and I do love to serve, and I love to be a part of a team, especially one that's successful, and that's what we have in Foxborough for the most part. It will have an impact, and hopefully encourage people that are younger, that have a vested interest in their kids' education, to continue to step up and to serve and to do the things that are really needed by a community that wants to, be the best at what they do. So I'm looking forward to normalcy. I'm looking forward to getting back to what matters the most. I'm looking forward to learning from what we didn't do well. Not what we did well, but what we didn't do well, and then charting a course for the future that will put us in the best position possible.
Yeah, thank you, Pam. Bill, if you wouldn't mind, I just want to make sure I heard the question correctly. Would you mind repeating the question, please? Bill, I think you're on mute.
I knew I'd do it eventually.
Thank you.
And no problem repeating it. After going through a pandemic and still going through a pandemic and all that's accompanied it in the last couple of years, how do you think the role of a school committee has changed, or has it changed? Does it remain the same? What challenges are presented to school committees today that maybe require a different approach? And how would you go about bringing that about if that is your opinion?
Sure. Thank you for repeating it. So I do not think that fundamentally the role of the school committee has changed. Again, our focus is on student outcomes. We want to make sure that our students are successful. We want to make sure that our educators and our administrators and our school staff have the resources that they need and the support that they need from the administration, from the school committee, and from the taxpayers of our towns to make sure that they can do the job that they need to do to get the highest possible student outcomes. That has always been the role of the school committee, and I think that will continue to be the role of the school committee. I think the bigger challenge that's coming into play, and we've seen it somewhat in this election, is the political divisiveness that's happening, that is trying to feed into and divert us away from our goal of successful student outcomes. We talk about masks. We talk about removing diversity, equity, inclusion as part of a cornerstone of our strategic vision. We talk about not focusing on social and emotional development. Foxborough has always been about developing the whole child. That means successful academics. That means successful emotional development. That means successful physical development. That means fostering creativity, inclusion, equality, and support. That's what we do. We need to be very persistent to not let political divisiveness continue to distract us from that mission. Pam, you're on mute.
Sorry, it didn't work this time. You are next. Do you need the question repeated? Brent.
Oh.
Brent is next.
Yes, please. I would love to hear Bill repeat the question.
Absolutely, no problem. After going through a pandemic and all that's accompanied it in the last couple of years, and we're still going through it, do you think the role of the school committee has changed, or does it remain the same? What challenges are presented to school committees today that maybe require a different approach? And if there is one, how would you go about bringing that to fruition?
Thank you. I'm going to echo a bit of what Mr. Canfield said in saying that the core functions of the school committee won't, and nor should they, change in terms of minding the store, as it were, being the administration, the budget, and the strategic vision of the direction of the district. All of that, as Mr. Canfield alluded to, is in service to teaching all kids and teaching the whole child and moving all kids forward. I alluded to earlier the fact that Foxboro's current areas for growth are in doing just that for all kids. And that is the strategic and operational thrust of the current administration and the current school committee. If you want to look at our strategic goals, they're very easy to find online or on my webpage. Now, in terms of other things I would like to see the school committee do, and again, I'm only currently, if I stay on it, I'm only one of 5, so 20% of that equation it alludes to what Mr. Pyries was saying, because parental outreach is not actually a core function of the school committee. However, there is a role for that, in my opinion, but how the school committee handles that has to be up to the current makeup of the school committee and cannot be decided by one person. And that's a discussion that, if allowed to continue on school committee, which I really hope I am, would be part of something that I want to bring to the current and continuing slate of members on the school committee is a look on how we do communicate that and using the district to do that. What is the role of the school committee? And things like that, because it's not common knowledge. And Bill, I believe your questions to Mr. Keefe and Mr. Elfman earlier about political engagement and voter turnout and just knowledge of the process speaks to that for folks who caught that first part of the program today.
Great, thank you very much. And finally,
Yep. I'd like to go back to what Rob said. So it's not political divisiveness, where children right now are losing all of their critical thinking skills, right? We focus too much on emotional thinking, which turns into groupthink, which turns into complete conformity. And you guys both, Brent and Rob, you talk about the whole child, right? To me, that just sounds a little creepy. I don't know why. SEL, social emotional learning, makes children do constant self-examination, right? In the form of surveys and whatever data that you're trying to mine on these kids every single day. And that's happening right now in Foxboro. And the parents of the children here in the Foxboro system should know that. I don't think a lot of parents know that their kids are getting surveyed all the time. If you're not thinking critically, right? If you are thinking critically in schools, you're separated because you're not thinking within the group think. You're breaking conformity, and that's what we're really trying to do to our children. So I see a big problem with SEL and the diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives. I've always wanted to get back to reading, writing, and arithmetic. You don't have the whole child. Our children aren't your property. And I think as a school committee, we need leadership to call a spade a spade. That's why we need more parents to speak up on their children's behalf and really dig in and find out what's going on in the school systems. This isn't political, Rob. This is something that parents are now engaged in. And some say sunlight is the best disinfectant. And I'm casting a big light on all of these social programs that don't need to be in our public school systems. So, Bill, back to your question about does the school committee need change? I think we need some leadership change. I can tell you that. In respect to I think my time is up and I don't want to run over it. So sorry, Pam.
Yeah, it's all right. Bill, do you have a follow-up to this question? Or would you like to go on to your next topic?
I didn't initially, but now I feel like, we need one right then. So I just, want to ask all the candidates, do you agree with Mr. Pyries' statement? Is Foxboro not teaching critical thinking? Is there groupthink going on in Foxboro? Are the kids being not taught properly in the Foxboro school system when it comes to critical thinking skills? What's the opinion of each candidate, please?
Okay, and we'll go in the same order as we just did this whole question. So Matt, you go first.
Yeah, listen, I think it's a tough question. I'm not a big fan of trying to take someone else's viewpoint and then comment on it. I guess I would say this. I think Foxborough school system is incredible. They do an incredible job of teaching, the things that really matter. The one thing I guess I would say that I've learned that I wasn't as aware of throughout this process, and that is that there is and it may be the number one strategic goal. Brent, I don't know, you could comment on this. I think I've heard you speak to this, but diversity, equity, and inclusion, the SEL is the number one, I don't want to say goal, but it's one of the number one things that you're working towards within the school system. And I would just say that without any knowledge and without understanding exactly what that represents, my initial concern would be that as a parent with kids that kind of hang out with everybody and kind of run, all the way from, the borough to the high school, is that I've not seen things that would fall into that category that are a negative. And so when I look at how I would prioritize the goals of our school system, and as a school committee member, I would say, okay, what are the biggest needs that we have? And I haven't seen them. I'm not saying that there aren't things that I'm unaware of, but I haven't seen that. So it is a concern of mine that would be a major priority within our school system. So that would be my only comment to that question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Again,
And
Bill, I'm sorry. I do want to make sure I heard the question correctly. So if you would unmute yourself and ask the question again, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. I just want to give the other candidates a chance to comment and to answer the question. Is Foxboro not teaching critical thinking? And
Thank you.
Are the children being taught a groupthink? And is critical thinking something that is lacking in the Foxboro school system?
and just a reminder, it's a 1-minute follow-up, please.
Yeah, it's a simple one-word answer, right? No. Foxboro is teaching critical thinking. We know that our students are coming out of our schools prepared for whatever is next in life for them, whether that's going on to higher education, whether that's entering the workforce, whether that's taking a gap year, whatever they're choosing to do with their families and their guardians to do after high school or after they leave Foxboro schools, we know that they are prepared to do it. We have the evidence, going back to people that are referred to needing evidence to make decisions. We have the evidence that we need to show that our schools are successful, that our students are successful. Our students for students that are going into higher education, they are going into some of the top universities in the world, right? For students that are entering the workforce, they are entering that workforce prepared. For students that are entering a vocational career, they are approaching that career with preparedness, with a plan, and with the common sense that says they have found part of their voice in Foxboro and they know how they want to represent themselves in the world.
Thank you. Brent?
Thank you. Thank you. I will also start with the one-word response, which is yes. I do believe Foxboro teaches their students to be critical thinkers. My own family's arc through the district currently spans some time at Taylor, Burrell, Ahern, and the high school. Haven't hit the IGO yet. But in the time my own children have gone through this district, I have been inspired, both as a parent and as a teacher, as a classroom teacher, to try on some of the things that I've heard coming out of our classrooms. As an elementary student, my both of my kids would come home and talk about how they were challenged to explain their thinking and how they were to solve a math problem, and honoring different ways of thinking through that. When it comes to history, Mr. Pires mentioned history earlier, so let's touch on that. I've had both of my students come home and talk about looking at issues from multiple sides, and also having to write and argue from multiple sides. That is, by definition, critical thinking. And then lastly, echoing what Mr. Canfield said, I want all of our kids to have a number of visions of possible futures they might be able to travel, whether it's as a citizen, employee, business owner, just human being on the planet. And you only do that, and I believe Foxborough is successful, you only do that through fostering critical thinking. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe, you get the last comment on this topic.
Thank you. I think I made my point was pretty clear. A basic tenet of social emotional learning is to create. I mean, it's hard to go against the grain here and stick your neck out, but it creates groupthink. It really does. And like I mentioned earlier, it creates complete conformity. So those are things that, again, I'm a good forecaster. I know when stuff is coming, and we may not be doing that right now in the Foxborough school system, but the framework is laid out. It will be here pretty soon. And I think that there's a better way to go about teaching our community and students in the school system. And that is getting back to the basics. I think we've complicated it. We've mentioned that there's highly educated people telling us what to do all over the place. Maybe we just need to get back to the basics. And that's my point. I think I've been pretty clear. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, Bill, final topic. Go ahead and ask your question. And this time around, Brent will be our first speaker.
Okay, thank you. I know you're all upset that this will be the final question, but no matter how much you beg, this is going to have to be it. In school districts throughout the Commonwealth and beyond, some parents and citizens have said that CRT, or critical race theory, or at least the principles assigned to that general term, need to be either stopped locally or prevented from being adopted. Simple question: do you believe CRT or the same general principles commonly attributed to CRT are being taught improperly or otherwise in the Foxborough School District? Do you see this as a real issue in the local school system, or is it national politics again seeping into local politics?
Thank you for the question. That's excellent, Bill. I appreciate the detail you put into these questions tonight. You're really getting at the heart of the matter, and it's wonderful. So thank you for that, and thank you for the opportunity to answer it. So I do not believe that CRT, critical race theory, as presented in various graduate schools around the country and world, is a current tenet in any of our Foxborough classes. And I think it's been politicized, and I think it has the letters have become a scapegoat for some folks who fear. We were talking about not living through fear earlier, and I think the folks pushing the agenda of let's get rid of CRT, not that it's being taught, but let's get mad and scared about it, are purely political. At the heart of that, though, is a fear by parents. And I spoke to this another night when we had another community forum where I got to speak with these gentlemen, and it was a very productive evening. I think, and I'm not putting words in anybody's mouth, I don't believe, but I think where some of the fear comes is that, are my kids going to be in a classroom where they're told what to think, or as Mr. Pires was saying, indoctrinated into groupthink? And I can tell you from an educator standpoint, from an administrator standpoint, and school committee member standpoint, the fastest way for somebody to end up in the principal's office talking about their teaching performance is to try to indoctrinate kids. That's not how educators should do things. That's not how I believe educators at Foxboro do things. And nor do I fear that that is something that's, as Mr. Pyrie said, that's definitely coming. I don't think the sky is falling. I think that we actually have critical thinking going on in our schools through the tireless efforts of our teachers and supported by our administrators and our current slate on the school committee. So thank you.
Thank you. Next to answer this question is Joe. Do you need it repeated?
Yeah, why don't you repeat it, Phil?
Sure. In school districts across the Commonwealth and beyond, some parents and citizens have said that CRT, critical race theory, or at least the principles generally ascribed to that term, need to either be stopped locally or prevented from being adopted. Do you believe, as a candidate, that CRT or the same general principles commonly attributed to it are being taught improperly or at all in the local Foxborough School District? Do you see this as a real issue in the local system, or is it national politics seeping into local politics?
I think it's national politics, but it's real, and it's at the local level around the country. Obviously, the framework has been laid out for some kind of critical race theory being taught in school districts across the state and across the country through DEI, and that's just a fact. Critical race theory, I believe, is dangerous to be taught at the elementary or junior or middle school and high school level. I think it should be reserved maybe for people with much higher academic pedigrees than myself. So while I don't think it's here, again, all any parent needs to do is just forecast where we're headed, and I am here to just speak the truth and shine a light on where we could go. So, Brett, I'm not living in fear. In fact, the only thing I fear is God and nothing else. But I'm also not dumb, and I can see where things are headed. It's easily predictable what's going on in our public school systems here and across America. I can just leave you with a quote from Condoleezza Rice, who once slammed CRT, saying that it only disempowered blacks, and white people of today shouldn't be reprimanded from the wrongs of the past. That was from a pretty high level person in government, and I don't want to see CRT here in our school systems in Foxborough. And like I mentioned earlier, maybe it should be reserved for much smarter people than myself. That was a joke.
Thank you. Joe, you are next. Or sorry, Rob.
Right. So I'll cut right to the chase. No, I do not believe that critical race theory is being taught in our schools. Yes, I believe that critical race theory, as I said, as an acronym, so CRT, is national politics seeping into our schools where they do not belong, as I said. I find it interesting when we talk about teaching critical thinking, and then we talk about we need to reserve some subjects for higher level thinkers. I think we trust our educators. We trust our administrators who are highly qualified, who spend years preparing for their role and then spend hours every day making sure they stay prepared to make sure that they are teaching kids what is appropriate for their age, what is appropriate for their learning style, what is appropriate for the curriculum that the state mandates for us. And I find it insulting to those educators and to the families that work together with those educators to educate the whole child, to say that a political theory or the politicization of critical race theory is seeping into our schools.
Great, thank you. Finally, Matt, do you need the question repeated?
No, thanks. Look, CRT is definitely national politics. And look, the only thing that I'll add to this is that look around our community and look at the leaders, look at the people that you run into every day, look at our educators, look at our teachers that are in those classrooms and our administration. CRT isn't going to be a problem. I don't think it's been a problem. I think it's definitely tough to deal with all the things that come at every one of us through the political realm, what we see on TV, what could happen, what may happen. At the end of the day, I'm a big believer in dealing with what is actually happening. And, you know, I think that we can all be very proud of what our kids are learning, what they're doing, who they're around, how they deal with other people. Great people do great things. When you have a community of great people, you can handle anything. And let's tackle the things as they come when they come. Thank you.
Thank you all. Bill, did you have any follow-up to this last question?
No, I think the candidates have suffered enough with my questions, and I thank them for their candor and for their answers and for allowing me to be a part of it. And I wish them all luck in the upcoming election. And I'm glad that Foxboro has choices.
Great. Thank you all so much. So now that we're done with our question and answer, each candidate may have up to 2 minutes to make a closing statement. And we will start our closing statements in reverse alphabetical order with Brent. Brent, you have 2 minutes if you'd like to make a statement.
Thank you. So I want to thank everybody who wrote into the community inbox, who sent me and any committee member, whether I knew about it or not, any email or call in these last 3 years. And I want to personally thank Joe and Matt and Rob for putting your necks out there and running. As all of us have joked, it's a volunteer gig, and we're working pretty hard to keep it or get it. And it's something I care passionately about because I love this town. I love education. And I want to just continue to see the goals that the current slate has put in place push forward. And it does take patience. It does take pushing. And I really want the opportunity to continue to serve the students of Foxboro. With that, I'll reiterate my earlier invitation to reach out to me to ask a question, big or small. You can also fill out a question on a website. I think it works. It's www.rooterforfoxboro.org, spelled O-R-O. And I will get back to you. Thank you so much for your time tonight. And Jaycees, Bill, Pam, candidates, thank you so much for making this what our community is about, open, honest discourse so that people can make a choice. So thank you, everybody. Please vote May 2nd.
Thank you very much, Brent. Next to make a closing statement is Joe Pyrese, please.
Thank you, Pam. Thank you to everyone who's joined here tonight. I am truly humbled by the outpouring of support that I've received from parents and the community in general. This was something totally unexpected. So it's been a really humbling experience for me. I want to make clear that I will be a loud voice for parents who feel that they've been silenced over the past year. I'm not afraid to listen to all sides, but I'm equally not afraid to speak up when something is unpopular. I have the safety and well-being of all students in my heart. I'm only trying to do what I think is right. I'd like to thank all the candidates, Brent and Rob and Matt and the Jaycees for doing this. I think this is great for the community to have multiple people here going for, a position that is very important to the town and the community. So I guess I would conclude with please consider voting for me on May 2nd. And thank you, everybody, for your time.
Thank you very much, Joe. Matt, you are next if you would like to make your final statement.
Yeah, thanks, Pam and Bill. You guys put a lot into this. Jaycees and FCA, great work. This has been flawless. This might be the easiest Zoom I've ever done. You did a great job. Thank you. And to the candidates, of course. I've learned a lot from all of you. I've learned a lot through this process. Look, there's certain things that we all do, and some do better than others. And one thing that I know for sure is that I've been blessed to be around incredible people. And a lot of those people reside in our community. Some of them push me a little harder than others. But at the end of the day, I love to learn, and I like to do things with people that have a heart, like I said at the beginning, to serve. And I think when you're around those kind of people, you're inspired, you're pushed to become a better person, become a better man, become a better father. I know that this process will do that for me. I know that the people that have encouraged me and supported my wife and I have gone out of their way to work on our behalf. And honestly, I can't thank them enough. So to each and every one of you that have made an impact, throughout this short campaign, so to speak, appreciate it. I look forward to serving. I appreciate the opportunity and look forward to May 2nd. So definitely encourage everyone to go out and express their voice. It's one of the greatest rights we have in this country. And thank you for the time tonight.
And thank you. And finally, Rob Canfield, you get the last statement.
Oh, thank you very much. And again, Pam, Bill, Foxboro Cable, Jaycees, I really appreciate it. Bill, I appreciate your questions. This is my third candidate tonight. My first run for school committee, I was not successful, but this is my third candidate this night. And Bill, I do have to tell you, I think your questions were probably much more relevant than questions I've been asked previously in my other experiences. So I really appreciate the time you took to prepare those questions. Again, my focus is on student outcomes. My focus is on making sure that everybody involved with our schools has a voice, whether that's parents, whether that's taxpayers, whether that is educators or administrators or students, right? Everybody has a voice because that's what it takes to create a successful student, and that's what it takes to create a successful school community. I appreciate that Joe and Matt have entered into this race with Brent and I. It is not for the faint of heart, certainly not this year at all. So I do appreciate that you guys both expressed concerns, Joe directly at committee meetings, Matt through emails to our inboxes. I appreciate both those things. And I appreciate the fact that you both stood up and said, I want to participate in a greater way. What I hope for our community is that all of the energy and interest that's being put into this election carries over after this election so that the community stays involved with our schools. That is what we need, whether that's volunteering at the PTO, whether that's volunteering whether that's going to a concert at a school, whether that's going to a sports performance. Stay involved with the schools. Don't let this election be the only thing that you're interested in. Stay involved because your involvement means we're going to have better schools and therefore our community is better. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening.
And thank you all. It's been great having all of you here, and we do appreciate your participation. We appreciate you all for running for these very important roles. School committee is a huge part of the community. I wish you all a good night and good luck on election day. Well, this brings our program to a close. Again, we'd like to thank all of our candidates for taking the time to be here with us tonight. A big thanks once again to Foxboro Cable Access for partnering with the Jaycees and helping produce the show. This program will be rebroadcast on this channel up until Election Day. So if you missed anything, you have another chance to see it. Please see the FCA program schedule for show dates and times. You may also view this program on the FCA website. That is fcatv.org. Finally, we'd like to thank you, our audience at home, for tuning in and taking the time to hear what all of our candidates had to say. We hope the information in the broadcast will help inform your vote on May 2nd. A reminder that the polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. on May 2nd at the John J. Ahern Middle School, which is located at 111 Mechanic Street. The annual town meeting will be held the following Monday, May 9th at 7:30 p.m. in the auditorium at the Foxboro High School, which is located at 120 South Street. On behalf of the Foxboro Jaycees and all of our candidates, thank you for watching. Have a wonderful evening.